Good afternoon. I'd like to begin that our policy as a trading nation is that we have opened our market both for trade and investment. And I think study shows that there is a direct correlation of an open market vis-a-vis economic growth and development. And for purposing of opening the market, basically we negotiate with our trading partners a pre-trade agreement. And under this pre-trade agreement, there are two areas by which parties will have to work on. Number one is the aspect on market access, meaning you will be able to export your products in that particular market with lesser tariff, if not zero tariff for that matter. And the second area is to negotiate on rules, because the rules of conducting trade, business, investment, among others, provide stability and predictability. Now, this topic, which is navigating the rules of origin, will deal on that area of market access. So, in other words, how are you going to access the market of our trading partner under a preferential arrangement? Now, take note that having an FTA with a trading partner and securing a market access is not automatic. There are certain rules that has to be complied with before you can enjoy these benefits. Because if there is no compliance, then the market access that we have secured is nothing, or I would say ineffective. And for you to enjoy that market access, it's important for us to understand the rules of origin. Now, what is the rules of origin? Basically, the rules of origin is the set of criteria used to determine the nationality of a product. And having thousands of tariff lines, for example, in the Philippines, we have 11,000 tariff lines. Each tariff line will have its own set of rules to determine its origin. Same thing with our trading partners, such as Japan, China, among others. So if a good meets the required rules of origin, then it is deemed eligible for preferential treatment. So it's only at that time that you can now avail of, let's say, the zero tariff or a lesser tariff compared with your other competitors of course, in the global community. Now, the Philippines, particularly in Europe, as our trading partner, has been actively engaging with them. And for purposes of securing preferential arrangement or access, there are three platforms that our exporters can avail of. One, we have the EU GSP Plus, which we have secured in 2015. And the other one is the UK GSP Enhanced Framework. Take note that UK GSP is a result of the Brexit. And it's a good thing that the United Kingdom maintained the preferential access that our stakeholders are enjoying in their market. And the third one is the free trade agreement that we have secured with the EFTA countries, or the countries such as Switzerland, Norway, Liechtenstein, and Iceland. So basically, under these platforms, you will note that the two platforms, the EU GSP Plus and the UK GSP Plus, are, I would say, unilateral. So we do not have a free trade agreement with EU and UK, but just the same, because we are a developing country, they have given us this preferential access. With respect to our market access with EFTA countries, that is based on an FTA. Now, for your perusal, when you talk about FTA, that is more stable because that is forged via an international agreement. Now, let's talk about EU GSP Plus and the UK GSP rules of origin. Now, under these two platforms that I have mentioned, for our stakeholders or exporters, to be more specific, to enjoy preferential origin, the product must be either wholly obtained or the same has undergone sufficiently worked or processed products. Now, one principle that is being observed in the ROO is what you call non-manipulation rule, meaning for products to benefit from this scheme during transportation from a beneficiary country to the EU or UK, the goods must not be altered, transformed, or subjected to operations other than, of course, preserving the good condition of the goods. Apart from tariff preferences, both EU and UK GSP enhanced framework generally impose same rules of origin to GSP beneficiary countries. Now, what do we mean by wholly obtained products? Products that are wholly obtained in a GSP beneficiary country means that only that country is involved in the production. So generally, this would involve natural products such as plants, vegetables, mineral products, live animals, among others. Now, the other rules that you have to comply also is for a product to have undergone sufficiently work or process. Now, there are three areas by which you can claim that the product undergone a sufficiently work or process operations. One is that there is a change of tariff heading, or there is compliance with the value or threshold set in the agreement. And the third one is that it has undergone specific process required on that particular product. Okay. Now, in reading the rules of origin, take note that in these slides, you will see three columns. Okay. The first column is on the HS classification, which states the harmonized system or the chapter in the tariff classification. And then on the second column, you have the product description. And then the third column provides applicable rule. So for example, on this particular slide, you have here preparations of meat. And for you to enjoy the preferential arrangement, the manufacturer must be from materials of any heading except meat and edible meat, offal, under Chapter 2, and materials of Chapter 16, obtained from meat and edible meat, offal of Chapter 2, and in which all the materials of Chapter 3 and materials of Chapter 16 obtained from fish and crustacean, mollusks, and other aquatic invertebrates, depending on the product. Now, to illustrate this, we have here an example of change in tariff heading and wholly obtained product. So for tunas, so under EU GSP Plus and UK GSP rules of origin, for tuna products to access the EU and the UK market, the tunas must either be caught by Philippine-registered vessels or caught in Philippine waters. So take note of the word "or." So it's either it is caught by Philippine vessels or caught within Philippine waters. If these tunas are then processed here in the Philippines, like canned products, then it can be exported to EU and UK market under a preferential arrangement. Now, the second aspect is on value or ad valorem. So again, just like in the presentation earlier, we have here the three columns. And you will note that in the third column, which is the applicable rule, for example, on cocoa and cocoa preparation, you will note that for it to enjoy preferential arrangement, it has to be manufactured from materials of any heading except that the product that the individual weight of sugar and or materials of Chapter 4 used does not exceed 40%. And that the total combined weight of basically non-originating material should not exceed 60%. So in other words, these are the two requirements that you have to hurdle. Either one, non-originating material, meaning the material coming from outside the Philippines or not recognized source of raw material, will not exceed 40% in terms of weight. And the total of the non-originating material should not exceed 60%. Okay. So to illustrate, we have here a cacao product or a chocolate, which is the final product. So the raw material is cocoa, and you have 80 kilograms for cocoa powder, and you have mixed the same with white sugar, which is only 20 kilograms. So noting that the sugar did not exceed the 40% threshold, then you are compliant with that. And if the same is processed in the Philippines into chocolate, then the same can be exported to EU or UK at a preferential arrangement. Now, another area in complying with the rules of origin is the requirement on certain processes. So in other words, certain products, as I mentioned earlier, will have to undergo specific process. And usually, this is common with products such as textile or garments. So for example, the manufacture of garments starting from non-originating yarn confers origin. So if the same is weave, and all subsequent manufacturing stages are carried out in the Philippines. Okay. Now, with all these rules, still you have to convince, of course, the receiving market or the importing market that you have complied with these rules of origin. And for purposes of compliance, you have to adhere to the proof of origin as required under the EU GSP Plus, under the UK GSP framework, or the PHFTA agreement. Now, for EU GSP Plus, the proof of origin can be complied with via the EU REX, or the registered exporter. So what is this EU REX? EU REX is a self-certification system that has been applied to EU GSP beneficiary countries and FTA partners. The EU REX system, which is PH started to implement on January 1, 2020, replaces the previous certificate of origin, which is the GSP Form A. Now, for UK GSP proof of origin, the requirement is that you have to submit the GSP Form A. And the same does not need to be stamped or signed by an authority designated by the GSP beneficiary country. Or you can also comply by submitting an origin declaration on an invoice, packing list, or consignment note, which must include information that allows the identification of an originating product. Both of these proof of origin, the GSP Form A and the origin declaration, have a validity of 2 years from their date of issuance. Now, with respect to our free trade agreement with EFTA countries, we can say that the rules of origin is exporter friendly because of the following feature. Number one, we have product-specific rules that are on a per-chapter basis. So in other words, you don't have to refer to specific tariff lines. So the whole chapter, there is only one rule for that. The qualifying value content is only 35%, and that there is a descriptive presentation of product-specific rules. And most importantly, we observe what you call the de minimis threshold, meaning goods that do not meet the required change in tariff classification may still qualify for preferential treatment if the value of all non-originating materials that did not meet the required change in tariff classification does not exceed 20% of the ex-works price of the goods. So, for example, we can import raw diamond from South Africa, process it here in the Philippines, and then export the same to EFTA countries. In fact, for EFTA countries, this is one, I would say, a promising market for high-value products of the country. Also, with respect to fish products, under the PHFTA agreement, global sourcing for fish products are allowed. So in other words, there is no qualification if it is caught in Philippine waters or caught by Philippine vessels. What is important is that these fishes can be sourced anywhere else in the world, processed in the Philippines, and export the same to EFTA countries. Now, for garments products, the rule is also liberal. Liberal than what is required by EU and the UK market. because here the cut and sew processing for garments is allowed. So in other words, you can import raw materials such as garments and textile, process it here in the Philippines, and then export to EFTA countries. Now, also, for purposes of complying with the proof of origin, this arrangement that we had under PH-EFTA is exporter friendly because we do allow self-declaration. So in other words, it's the exporter that will be declaring based on the form agreed upon that indeed the product he or she is exporting to EFTA countries are compliant under the rules. And for purposes of reference, I have included here in this slide an example of an origin declaration to be filled out by the exporter. So basically, summing up, this is the arrangement that we have right now in the EU markets, the UK, and also the EFTA countries. So again, to summarize, for EU and UK, the preferential arrangement that we have is a unilateral one that is via GSP Plus arrangement. And with the EFTA countries, the 4 countries that I mentioned, that is based on a free trade agreement. Now, one reminder that I'd like to, of course, mention is that one challenge that we have is that while we are aggressive in exploring, concluding free trade agreements with our trading partners, it is important that our stakeholders should optimize the utilization of our FTAs. We have noted that for some of our existing FTAs, we have a low utilization rates. And so therefore, there's really need to, in a way, come up with a more aggressive and intensified campaign on FTA utilization. That's why we highly appreciate this opportunity given to us by PHILEXPORT. This is one way for us to, of course, tell the stakeholders that there's a good opportunity waiting for them in the markets of our trading partners. Thank you very much.